For the last year, I have been isolated because of my treatment, and then pandemic happened. And the last year was really hard for me mentally, but I found a way to cope with it on my own while staying at home. But for the last month, I began working again. I am working from home, but social. I am now seeing friends with social distancing and all. And I found that seeing friends actually triggered my anxiety because I was okay on my own and I was okay with my diagnosis and all. But and I am now I can now work and I can now continue with my studies, etc. But when I see there's another form of life is going on still with the people at my age, it kind of triggers my anxiety and I find it really hard to cope with. Is there any suggestions you can tell?
Yeah, so you're going to tell me if I haven't understood this properly, but what you were saying is that there is an element of what I would call social anxiety, which is almost you sort of re-entering the world after self-isolation, and then also an anxiety because you're seeing other people in your peer group sort of go on with their life without your restrictions. So the first element of that, which is social anxiety, this has actually been really, really common as people have moved out of isolation. And all that has happened is that by putting ourselves into isolation, we've created new behaviors. And COVID has actually sent a new message to our brain that being around people is dangerous. So it triggers this limbic system. It triggers an anxiety response. So you have to, this is where rationalizing the anxiety and retraining that response is really important. So, it might be that what you do is rather than go for a 30-minute socially distanced walk, because that's going to be too overwhelming, that's going to trigger too much anxiety, you do a 5-minute one. And then once you've stayed with your anxiety for a little bit and it begins to turn off that signal, maybe you do that walk a few times, then you do a 10-minute walk. And then gradually, as you expose yourself to more anxiety and your brain learns that you're okay, it will begin to turn off that signal. The important thing is that if you're with friends, hopefully you can share that to them that you're experiencing some social anxiety as a result of putting yourself into isolation, and they can be supportive of it. So what I would say is it's one of those odd side effects of putting ourselves in isolation, is that for a proportion of the population that's actually created social anxiety. So you then actually have to treat that social anxiety. But I'd say be really confident because before COVID you didn't have social anxiety. So it is just going to take a bit of planning, a bit of effort, and you should be able to gradually enjoy being with your friends again. The other element, which is what you were saying about seeing your peers go on with their life, that's really, really hard. And there's not really an easy way through it. I think if you can talk about it with your friends, I think it's really helpful for people to understand where you're at. People can't read our minds. People have no idea what we're thinking or feeling. Half the time it's hard for us to understand. So it's so important to find a way to share your narrative which feels safe and feels containing. Obviously, no one has a right to know what's going on with you, but if they're friends that are around, I would say think about what you can share to help them understand what's going on with you. The reality is that your life is very different from your peers, and that's sad and it's awful, but there's no way to make that better. It's more about us adjusting to it and learning a way to communicate around it. The reality is that all of us die, but most of the time we live in denial about it. Because that's not a place that we naturally go to. Actually, our brain doesn't want us to. That's why it triggers anxiety. It wants us away from death and illness as much as possible. But that uncertainty exists for all of us. When you get a cancer diagnosis, the real challenge is learning to live with that reality, whereas other people don't have to. So I think this is where, I wish I could say you do this and that technique and it will remove that reality from you, but unfortunately that is your reality. So actually it's more important to find a way to adjust and learn to live with it. I'm not going to say the word accept because I don't see why you should accept it, but I think you do have to find a way to recognize that there is a loss there. You know, your life isn't akin to maybe some of your peers, and that is a loss. And we have to process loss in order to be able to find another pathway, if you like, or find a way to adjust our life. And again, coming back to that present moment can really be helpful. So recognizing the loss, but then focusing on what you have here and now, and where you're at here and now, can be really helpful. So does that, I don't know if that helps in terms of your question. Do you tell me if it doesn't, and I can try again?
No, I can understand now in a better way how
good.
I am feeling and why I am feeling this way.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.